Hello and welcome to episode 180 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. This week on the show, energy bills could be cut in half for North Americans by mid-century due to renewables. That means my estate will pay far less for my cryogenic refrigeration bills.
You know, the best chance of success is if you freeze yourself while you're still alive.
Oh, I'm onto it. I'm way ahead of you.
UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is rolling back net zero goals. This is a terrible idea. But Sunak is practically a billionaire, so if he wants to sponsor this podcast, I will reverse my position. I mean, how bad are fossil fuels anyway, really? Plus, the Dirty Energy Show has a nice, sexy ring to it.
I think I figured out a way to bring Tesla-like route navigation to my Chevy Bolt. However, the dream of having my horn sound like a fart is still that, just a dream.
A consortium of U.S. states and territories has banded together to get 20 million heat pumps installed by 2030. No doubt they heard that Brian Stockton from the Clean Energy Show got a heat pump installed in his home in the frigid Canadian prairies and thought, why can't we have nice things too?
All that and more on this edition of the Clean Energy Show. And also on this week's show, more Carlos Ghosn pop culture. How Taiwan became the EV scooter capital of the world, and China is considering compensating utilities for all the coal-fired power they built. Brian, I want to start off this week because I had a dream about you. An absurd, vivid, very realistic dream that does not represent the conscious James. I want you to know that.
Sure.
And I'm not thinking about this stuff all the time.
Okay.
But it has to do with our socioeconomic differences, I think. Because I went, apparently, you know how you're tearing down your cottage and building a new cottage?
Yeah.
Well, in this case, you tore down your house, and I know you're not going to do that because you're completely restoring it and upgrading it. Mm-hmm. But you tore down your house and built this gigantic mansion, like just obscene. And so my family and I are going over there for a visit, and we go into the garage, but it's actually a parkade underground, like a parking garage.
Yeah.
Like a multi-story parking garage. And we get lost in there. And it's really weird. I couldn't. Anyway, the next thing I remember from the dream, I'm actually attempting to climb onto the roof. And the roof is many stories high. And it has a dome like our legislature building, a very old copper dome on it.
Yeah.
And a bell. There's this giant bell up there, like a church bell or a town center bell. And apparently I was told that you ring it every time you got a haircut.
Okay, well, I'll get to work on that right away. You know, there is a house, a kind of a McMansion in the east end of Virginia.
Yeah, I know.
That kind of looks like that. It's got some weird dome on the top, and it's all strange.
I have seen that, but Brian, I've got a surprise for you. I reenacted the dream with the AI, The Dream is Alive AI players, featuring Greta Thunberg AI, who plays an amalgamation of characters from my family. So here it is. What the hell is this, a parkade?
A parkade is a Canadian term meaning a large multi-street parking garage or car park.
He's got a parking garage.
I'm lost, Papa.
It's endless.
This place is huge. Talk about carbon footprints.
I'm lost already. I'm going on the roof. I'm going on the roof to look at it. Oh my God, it's got a dome like the legislature. How many houses did he demolish next door to make this monstrosity? And there's a bell.
He rings the bell whenever he gets a haircut.
I love me a haircut.
Really? He got a haircut. Well, good for him.
Wow, that was so vivid. It was like being there.
I had to bring you there. Explaining it just wasn't enough. And I still remember it. Yeah. Still remember that dream.
Yeah. Well, you know, I do hate it when that does happen in this neighborhood occasionally. Somebody tears down a house and they put up a McMansion. And it's just, terrible because it's just out of scale with all the other houses. So rest assured, I would not do that. I mean, sure, I might go 10 stories underground.
Sure.
That sounds
Just to park
like a
all
good
your
idea.
Teslas.
Just to park all my cars. But yeah, I wouldn't do that.
And think of the geothermal you could get down there,
Be amazing.
the ground source heat pump wealth of warmth if you went down several stories of parking. It's almost worth it.
Well, once you get underground to a certain level, it kind of like stays at the same temperature all the time. It's like, put on a big sweater. You maybe wouldn't even need to heat it.
Okay. Well, what's new this week?
All that's new for me this week is I watched some television.
Brian's TV.
Fantastic. That's great. All right. So, yeah, this is a new television series called Wanted, The Escape of Carlos Ghosn. And it's a 4-part documentary series that's on Apple TV. And I just wanted to bring it up because it is kind of a fun thing to talk about. And we spoke previously about there's a Netflix documentary about Carlos Ghosn. And of course, he was the CEO of Renault and Nissan, and he famously escaped the country of Japan in a musician's music case and fled the country. And he's in exile now in Lebanon, his kind of home country. Apparently, there's another one, too. There's at least 3 documentaries about this.
Wow. I mean, it is an interesting story, but my first question is, how do they make multi-part episodes out of it? Because it's not that long of a story.
Well, I'll tell you, like they're each kind of like a TV hour, like 45 minutes each. And it's based on a book written by 2 journalists. So these 2 journalists, and they're interviewed in the documentary, they're probably the sort of biggest experts on this. And I imagine if you wanted to keep up to date on this case, probably follow them because the case is still ongoing. So that's always a problem with a documentary like this. The case, like the story's not really over yet.
No.
Because he's still kind of awaiting trial.
Doing interviews
anyway,
now. Yeah, I saw him in an interview recently. We should say, have we said who he is? Like he's the former head of Nissan. He brought in the Leaf, the first mass-produced electric car worldwide.
Yeah, no, he was under his watch, the very first mass-market electric car. So he's, a big part of the EV story.
And then he got greedy and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, so in the first 3 episodes, it's really all about, because the fun thing about the story is him escaping from Japan in a box and being smuggled out of the country.
What box was it? It was a box for a musical instrument?
A music case, yeah. The guy smuggling him out kind of pretended that they were musicians, and he put a guitar case on top of this one. Like this was a case with wheels, and they drilled holes in the bottom of it so he could breathe, but not too many holes so he didn't fall through. But they put a guitar case on top of it as they wheeled it through security just to give the visual cue of, oh yeah, these are a bunch of musicians, getting on a private jet, which is probably not that uncommon of a thing. And he had done the research to realize that they don't usually scan those kind of things on the way out of Japan. They only tend to scan them on the way in. So this guy was like a former special forces guy who pulled off this thing. He really kind of knew what he was doing.
Do you know how much he got paid?
No, it didn't say. He initially did it, and I forget his name, but yeah, he's sort of a retired army guy from the U.S., and he has ties to Lebanon. That's kind of the main reason that he did it. And he knew people in Lebanon. They had mutual friends. And so he decided to do it without any payment up front. He just wanted to do it because he thought Carlos was being tortured in Japanese jails, which is basically true. Like Ghosn spent, at least 100 days in solitary confinement, which is not usually how CEOs are treated. This guy said that anything more than 15 days is considered torture, according to, world conventions or whatever. So, he just thought it was a good thing to do to get this guy out of the country, thought it was the right thing to do. Now, he's no longer a big fan of Carlos Ghosn because it sounds like he did get paid and his expenses were covered and everything, but then he was eventually arrested and his son was arrested and they both did jail time in Japan. Like they thought, their lawyers said, oh, there's no way we're going to extradite you to you'll get extradited to Japan because they will torture you if you get extradited. And, there's no way the U.S. government will allow that. But of course, the U.S. government did. He did 17 months in solitary confinement in a Japanese jail. His son did 13 months in solitary confinement. Do they keep everybody in solitary confinement in Japan?
Well,
that's what it seems like.
The apartments are small, so maybe it just seems that way. That is pretty bad for a human right.
It's really bad. Like, this is definitely, it seems like human rights violations
You and I,
to me.
accused of a crime, would probably escape too.
Yeah, and, we've had that problem in Canada as well. Like, solitary confinement is definitely overused in our prisons, but it's typically the most marginalized members of society that get hit with that kind of torture. This wouldn't happen to a CEO in Canada, I don't think, but it definitely happens to other people in Canada.
Yeah.
So the first 3 episodes of the series really are just kind of leading up to his escape, because that's the fun part, that's the exciting part, and it's all pretty well told. And Ghosn does an interview for the documentary, so he's all over it. He's in it. His wife is in it. But then they wait till the 4th episode to kind of give you the latest updates on the story, which paint a far less, rosy portrait of Ghosn and his behavior, because, of course, he's now been charged in France as well. So once this happened, Renault started looking into the books at Renault. He was the CEO of both companies at the same time. And so there's now an arrest warrant for him in France as well. But it appears that he won't be extradited to either country. Lebanon doesn't do that, apparently. People think, okay, well, if you're complaining about Japan so much and their terrible justice system, why don't you go to France then and face the charges there? And he's like, I don't think so. I don't want to do that.
So he really embezzled is what he did.
It sounds like it. Now, they ask him about that in the documentary because he's interviewed, and according to him, it's all above board. He's like, yes, tens of millions of dollars went to this company, went to that company. But according to him, it's all legitimate. When you're in the car business like that, yeah, tens of millions of dollars sometimes, but it's conflict of interest type stuff that is the question. Was it a conflict of interest for him to be involved in X company that has a relationship with this Nissan dealer in Oman, which was getting kind of extra payments, and then some money was going then to Ghosn's company? So, it's possible all that was legit and above board, but it doesn't really seem like it.
That's on Apple TV. And weren't we going to make it Brian's Book Nook and TV Corner still?
Was that what it was, Book Nook?
Yeah, I think the Book Nook has a good ring to it.
I don't know. But your theme song was excellent. So,
well, it was. We might as well keep it then. So I have been trying to replicate with my Chevy Bolt EV the route experience that you get in a Tesla, which is very good. What Tesla does is you will say, I want to go from here to city X. And then it'll say, okay, you need to charge here and here for this long, and it'll route you to the chargers. And it'll also preheat your battery and make the battery receive electricity fast, because it'll be at a nice, warm, juicy temperature the battery's like. Well, I don't have that part of it, but I've always wanted to really have the gasometer on cars. When I came back from the Rocky Mountains, I had really good fuel economy in the Rocky Mountains. Then I hit the wide open prairies, and my car was still basing its distance on that. So I ran out. Like, I didn't run out, but I had to stop at a charger that I didn't expect to. So that kind of, sucked. Added some time, and we were telling people when we were going to get home and stuff like that. I didn't want that to happen. And I also wanted to be able to have confidence in my range and be able to get it down to, say, 10%. So, because that's where it charges faster. It'll charge really fast between 10 and 50%. Yeah. So if I'm not getting down to that, I'm wasting time at the charger because it charges slow. My car charges only 50 kilowatts. So I bought the premium version of a better route planner. And that, when you do that, you can use it on your dash if you have Android Auto like the Chevy Bolts do. So you can have it on the screen like you would in your Tesla, right on your screen so you can look at it. And then secondly, it'll have live weather if you buy the premium edition for $7 a month. And I'm only going to buy it for the months that I'm actually traveling, which is not every month. Yeah, you have live weather, and you have that and terrain in your Tesla. So it takes into account, sometimes these things can really surprise you if there's a headwind. So that helps. It may not be perfect, but it helps give you a better estimate. And then thirdly, what it has to do is connect to your car and get the information of your battery and to know how fast it's going down and how fast and what the charge is at. So I use a dongle for that. They're called a Bluetooth dongle. Now, on most non-Tesla cars, Tesla has a different format of connector, I think, but most cars have a standard OBD2 connector, and that's for getting the codes so a mechanic will plug into your car computer and get the error codes off it. Well, lots of people do this. They put in, I was doing it with the Leaf just to see what the tire pressures was, and you can change a couple of settings, and even in the Prius, I turned off the backwards beep. I had to buy a new dongle though, because it required what's called a Bluetooth low energy dongle, so BLE. So I spent $40 from Amazon, got it. It worked first try, although I've talked to people online that said they couldn't get it working in their various cars, but it worked first time for me. And then I took it on a 45-minute highway trip. My wife and I just went out for a Sunday drive, and it was a bit rainy. And just the destination in your car will vastly, after 6 weeks of driving in the city, you use more energy on the highway, right? But this one knew right away, because it didn't change its estimate that I would arrive. I didn't leave with a full battery, so it said I would have to charge at 25% halfway on the trip to, say, Saskatoon, which is where I'm going this coming weekend. I have to go to a memorial service in Moose Jaw and then a trip to Saskatoon overnight to celebrate my son's birthday and just hang out. So that's going to be, at this time of year, it can get cold. I had fine and dandy time doing it in the summer when it was 80 degrees, 27 Celsius or warmer, nice temperature, thin air to drive through, and everything was fine. So this, I just want to make sure it works. So it did. It only changed after 45 minutes of driving. It didn't change his estimate by more than 1%. So I'm fairly confident in it, and I'm going to see how it works for this trip this weekend.
Well, that just brings up the question that this is something that clearly car manufacturers could put in the car, that if you were able to kind of hack it by plugging into this port, these other car manufacturers need to kind of step up their software game and just integrate this so you don't have to go through all that trouble to make it happen.
So Chevy does have something on their app, but I have no confidence in it.
Right.
For one, it's from Chevy, and two, it's just a kind of an awkward app, and it just doesn't seem to make any sense. And I'm not sure that I can use it on the dashboard of the car without paying them money. The thing where you push the OnStar, the ridiculous fees they charge for OnStar and the marketing that goes with that. I hate that. But anyway, I'll let you know how it goes. And it's just it's an interesting tip if you don't have a Tesla, and because Tesla gets that right. Did you find good confidence in that? I mean, you said one time you doubted it because it said you were going to have a higher battery at your destination.
Yeah, it seems to be a lot better in the new car, in the S, because first of all, it's a brand new car, and there's probably no battery degradation, but also just because it's got a bigger battery than the other one, like
so the
standard
air
range
is smaller.
model.
Okay.
Yeah, the air. So if you're out by 1%, it means more in the smaller batteried car, which is just for highway trips in the winter is obviously an issue. But yeah, no, the range we've been getting with both cars in the summer is amazing, and it just sort of makes me think. I think for our kind of daily driving, I think we use basically twice as much power in the winter. Like in the summer, we don't even plug the cars in every night, and it just seems like, you can go days and days without plugging them in. But then, of course, as soon as you hit winter and you want to preheat it in the morning, like it's for our daily driving around the city, it seems like twice as much power.
Okay, so I had a birthday since our last show, and I got socks.
Okay.
But how does this pertain to the Clean Energy Show? They're battery-powered socks.
Oh, fantastic.
This is a battery that goes in them, and it's about the size of a deck of cards, roughly, except maybe half as thick, and maybe a little smaller overall, but yeah. So that goes into a pouch that they go fairly high in your calf, which is weird for me. I don't wear that. That's like, if I was putting on a kilt or something, they might go halfway up my calf or something. But I tried them out. They've got an app, Brian. They come with an app.
Your socks have an app.
You turn them on with your app. So they discharge fairly quickly. I don't know how long. It'd take maybe an hour and a half at most, maybe an hour.
That doesn't seem so bad.
But this is for my winter's coming, and my Nissan Leaf doesn't have a heater, and it's just
Right.
I'll remind people why that is. It's because it would cost half as much as what I paid for the car to fix it. The car's not worth what I paid when it's 5 years, 6 years old now. I've had it for that long. And, it's just basically, I don't want to do it because there's no mechanic in town who can really do it. Like the dealership, I would have to tow it or transport it 4 hours away or 3.5 hours away or something and have it fixed because our dealership here refuses to do EVs. And it's a huge job in that car. Unfortunately, it's just the way it was designed. It's quite a bit easier in the Tesla. It was only like $1,100 in the Tesla, but it could be $5,000 in this car, which is too bad. So I got these socks. So if it's -40 and I have to drive my daughter to school or go to the gym, I have these socks I can turn on, low, medium, or high. And or I can use it for going for walks, but I kind of worried that I'd wear them out if I was going for walks in them. But it's an option. You can get those little hot pocket chemical things for your feet as well. But I thought this is kind of cool. But more importantly, the thing that I will use is a blanket. It's got an electric blanket for my car. So I plug it into the socket. Now it's not like a home electric blanket where you plug it into 120 volts or whatever in North America here, and it's not that. It's just 12 volts, but it does get a little bit warm, and it's a blanket. So the things that get cold to me when I do that are not my upper body because you're a Canadian, you're wearing a big parka or whatever, and I have heated seats and heated steering wheel. So the things that get cold are my feet and my legs. In that car when it does get cold. So that's not even a problem after like mid-February because the sun gets so warm that it warms the car to room temperature. It's kind of crazy. But for those dark, cold months ahead, I now have a blanket.
So I imagine you kind of looking like, like Granny in the old Looney Tunes, like in a wheelchair with a blanket over your legs.
Yes, it's a tartan pattern too.
Well, I've always been very interested like in these battery operated socks because, we've spent in our younger days, like, working on films out when it's -30 outside.
Oh, baby.
And that is absolutely what you need. And of course they have like battery powered jackets as well. But the feet are the things. Yeah. The
boots.
Feet are the things that always go first. Like that's where you got to get that.
Yeah.
heat.
The extremities. Also, with all the forest fire smoke, last week I was complaining about the forest fire smoke where we have so many days. We've set records. We've completely quashed the records we've had for days and hours of forest fire smoke here. And I swear they've never been this bad. We've had smoke before, but it's never been gagging on it. It's
horrifying.
Acrid smoke. So your favorite website, Wirecutter, I came across it a few months ago, and they had air purifiers on them when I was first thinking about this. And I put one on Amazon wish list, and then it went on. I have a thing that watches them when they go on sale, and there was a flash sale with about $100 off or 34% off or something. So I'm getting one for $200 delivered.
Yeah. So this is like something that sits in your house and purifies.
It's like a little fan with filters on it, and it has technology to actually know when it needs to turn on if you want to do it that way, I think. And it's supposed to do quite a bit of air. Like it's not for the whole house, but it does quite a bit of air in like half an hour. Like I think it'll do my whole upstairs in half an hour.
Well, I saw a review recently. I think it was maybe Engadget. They did a video review of, that Dyson has a portable sort of air purifier that you wear on your head. Like it's got headphones.
What?
Yeah. Dyson
is that what this world is coming to?
Yeah. Like it basically looks like large headphones, but then there's a metal piece that goes around your mouth, and this purifies the air. So they did a test, and they went to a university lab to see if this thing actually works, and it actually works. Now, you look like an idiot wearing one of these things in public, and it's quite expensive. It's like $1,000 or something, but it totally works. Like it's not exactly like a face mask, but it just filters the air around your mouth and nose before you breathe it in. And apparently it totally works.
Well, guess what? COVID and viruses and allergens and all that stuff, that gets picked up by these air purifiers. I mean, my doctor's office has them. My dentist's office has them. They have them running because of the pandemic. And yeah, my doctor's clinic has a special room if you have symptoms.
Mhm.
I had to go there once with my daughter. It was kind of scary because it's well, am I ever going to get out of here? Am I going to go to Japan and be in solitary confinement? What's going to happen to me?
And apparently there's cheaper options as well. So the Dyson is kind of the high-end one, but there are kind of simpler ones that are cheaper. I don't know that much about them. But
I find this whole thing depressing. I mean,
this is where we're headed.
Terrible. Okay, let's move on. I noticed on the local Facebook page that Tesla charging prices have gone up here to 59.60 per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
And I did a calculation on my car because when you're on the highway, you generally think about charging from 10 to 80%. So 70% of your battery. And I did the calculation of what that would be. And it'd be about $27 Canadian for me. And that was about the price that I would pay at like an Electrify Canada, which is like the same thing as Electrify America, but in Canada, because they do have higher rates of charge. And Tesla doesn't go up to 350 yet, but they do have 250. And so you can get a fairly fast charge. It costs the money to have that much electricity tied to the grid and have it available all the time. So yeah, but it's still not bad. It's still cheaper than gas, which by the way, gas is going up to $100, they're predicting a barrel. They
100?
want it to. The Saudis are cutting supply. Yeah. I hope you people listening, don't buy a gas car. Don't ever buy a gas car. Go buy a used EV. The used EV market is starting to, as if you're in the States, you got it made. There's lots of EVs around used.
So we pay about 15 cents per kilowatt hour for home charging. And so if Tesla's charging 60 cents, that's roughly 4 times more expensive. But of course, you're getting a lot of juice. So it makes sense that they have to charge more. It's a lot more than when I first got my Tesla 3 years ago. Like it was probably half that price. It's still cheaper than gas, but it's not nothing.
But this sort of plays into it too, because as a person who doesn't get a fast charge, I can go to any other charger. So I'm thinking about when Tesla opens up their network, and I was thinking, well, I'm only going to go to Teslas. And by the way, I wonder if they'll make a Tesla app for the Android. Wouldn't that be a good idea that I could put on Android Auto? Is there one? There is one. I mean, I have one.
Yeah, there is one.
I have one. I don't know if it does road planning though.
Right.
But it would be very cool if they had their own thing for the rest of us in our networks. Maybe they will, maybe not right away. But anyway, people are saying, well, I'm not going to charge there. There's a Tesla owner saying I'm going to buy a CCS adapter and charge elsewhere. But that's usually what people say when their gas price goes up, or in this case, energy prices. Okay,
so moving on, we've got a story here about Rishi Sunak, who is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And he has rolled back some of the green initiatives put forth by Boris Johnson.
I've been thinking about these issues for a long time. And as Chancellor, I was concerned about the impact on families of some of the policies that were being mooted. When you think about it, as I mentioned, policies that would cost a typical family around the country £5,000, £10,000, £15,000. And we seem to be on autopilot to just adopt these things. I didn't think that was right at the time. And now as Prime Minister, I've got an opportunity to change things. And what I don't want to do is make yet more short-term decisions, easy ways out that ultimately not be straight with the country about what those mean for them, the costs that those are imposing on them. Of course, that's all bullshit, as these policies will actually save families money. Listen to the cleanenergyshow and you'll know.
This, of course, is him delaying the ban on gas cars. He's sort of rolling back the plan for heat pumps to get more heat pumps in. He's basically just adding more years to the end, which is bad. But it did strike me that it is not necessarily what's going on in our neck of the woods with, conservative politicians, because he's still kind of claiming to be hitting the UK's goals for 2050, net zero by 2050. He's saying, no, we'll still get that. So at least they're not talking about just canceling everything.
In North America, they would say climate change doesn't exist. It's a sham and we're wasting our money. Yeah. That's what the rhetoric is here. So yeah, it's kind of nice. I know people in Britain are probably rolling over right now and not very happy with us saying that, but it is refreshing compared to North America. And they were going to ban combustion vehicles in 2030 and hybrids in 2035. And now they're both going to be banned in 2035, which kind of surprised me.
Now, our hope is that electric cars will be available in such supply and there'll be such demand for them that maybe these deadlines don't even matter, that, who's going to buy a gas car 5 years from now? It's just going to be a terrible, terrible investment. So, who knows how much this matters. I was struck by, there was another article here from The Guardian, an op-ed from a Tory MP, another conservative MP who was part of those initial goals, and he's just calling out Sunak for being an idiot. So I always like it when conservative politicians get on board with this, and because this obviously is not a left or right issue when it comes to the planet, but people often try and make it a left or right issue. So there are plenty of conservatives who realize that it's not an either or kind of thing. He says here that the net zero transition, that it's at odds with the economy, is absolutely false. In fact, it's the opposite. The more we delay on these things, probably the more expensive it's going to be for consumers.
Well, he does expect the majority of new car sales to be EVs by 2030, regardless of government policy. So boy, is that ever refreshing. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's so refreshing to hear from, hell, even a middle of the road or left wing politician don't seem to understand that. But obviously everyone's paying attention in Britain. No,
and of course the other issue for Europe and for Britain, has been the volatility of gas prices because of what's going on in Russia and a sudden move to try and get rid of Russian gas supplies. So it's just a great reminder that, the fossil fuel economy is a boom and bust economy. Like it's always been that way. Prices spike, they drop, they spike, they drop. But once we have a clean energy economy with abundant clean energy, it's just not going to be that. It's just not going to be this kind of turmoil that's happened. The cost of heating and stuff has really been bad in the UK and Europe, but that's because we're relying on fossil fuels.
And they fluctuate and they're going higher. So because of stupid wars.
Yeah. And we only have, a handful of countries that produce most of the oil. So if they want to crank up prices, as you mentioned, they can just cut what they're pumping out of the ground, and suddenly it keeps the prices up, and we all have to suffer from that.
I have a feeling, and this is my paranoid self here, I think they're trying to raise prices on gas to keep inflation high, and then that will hurt Biden. It'll hurt politics in Canada. Anybody who's running for re-election who's for climate policy will be affected by that. That's my negative thinking on that, but who knows?
Yeah. No, and inflation is still a big deal. High interest rates are still a big deal. This is a turbulent times ahead for sure.
Well, speaking of positive news, PV Magazine has a report from the global risk assurance company, DNV, and they said that the intrinsic efficiencies brought on by renewable energy will lower the overall cost of energy from 4% today. That is to say, our GDP, 4% of GDP goes to energy, regardless of what it is. If for trucks going down the street, for heating our homes, turning on our computer, everything is 4%, but that's going to go down to just 2.5% in 2050, they predict, for the United States and Canada. And I'm sure it's similar in other places, perhaps even better in some other places. But yeah, so it's actually, this goes into, against what the British PM is saying, that it will get cheaper for us, and it will get cheaper for the people producing power.
We have a story here from the U.S. There is a new consortium of different states. 23 state governments have announced a major push to reach 20 million deployed heat pumps by 2030. So this is a consortium of states that represents 60% of the U.S. economy and 55% of the U.S. population, so half of the U.S., and the states have gotten together to push this through. So Washington, New York, and California started this group. They call it the U.S. Climate Alliance. So these are states that believe that climate change is real and we have to do something about it. And their bold plan is to get 20 million heat pumps installed by 2030. The number right now is about 4.8 million. So in the next 7 years or so, we have to quadruple the number of heat pumps installed. And of course, with the Inflation Reduction Act in the U.S., there's subsidies for that. And a lot of these states that are involved in this consortium have incentives as well. And they have prioritized low-income houses and low-income earners in this because, of course, those are the people least likely to be able to afford it. So this consortium recognizes that and then tries to steer some of that funding into low-income people. So this is a major deal. This is a major initiative. 2030 and 20 million heat pumps. This is not something anyone was talking about when we started this podcast.
No, it wasn't. It really wasn't. I mean, it's only been the last year, really, that we've heard much about heat pumps. But since the invasion of Ukraine, it's become, a household, well, almost a household name. But yeah, I mean, the United States, perfect place. Most places can do really well with a non-cold weather heat pump, which are cheaper.
Yep.
You bought a cold weather heat pump, which we're going to be keeping an eye on as winter. Oh, by the way, it's supposed to be a warm winter here because of El Nino. So
is that right?
It's not going to be the best test for you. You might just cruise along fine and think you're great, and next year it goes down to minus 40.
Yeah.
But we'll see. So it'll be a long-term, study that we do on your heat pump here on the show.
Yeah. I'm mostly just worried about my electricity bills and how bad are they going to be.
Well, because they could be more expensive than gas if you're using resistive heating as a backup.
Yeah, and right now I pay $150 a month for my natural gas bill. It was down to as low as $100. I'm on equalized payments, so you pay the same amount every month, even though you use more in the winter. But the price of natural gas, of course, been creeping up. So, $150 a month for the natural gas is not cheap. So, I'd rather heat my house with electricity. And
you're insulating too, though. You're upgrading a lot of things in your house. So do you expect results from that?
Yes, of course, we've spray foamed our ceiling, so that's going to help a lot. A lot of our walls are spray foam, but not the whole house. We have decent upgraded windows. We're doing the big picture window this in about a month.
What's that going to cost us? That's a big window.
We left that one like we did the rest of the windows about a dozen years ago, but we left the front 3 picture windows because they're enormous and it's a big job. And they're nice too. Like they've got nice wood trim around them, mahogany trim. So we were reluctant to kind of, tear that out. But yeah, they're the only windows left that are kind of poor quality, and they there's a lot of condensation in the winter and it drips and it gets in the wall. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing that'll improve your life once you do it, probably overall.
We love to talk about electric scooters on the show, and these are the sort of Vespa style. I don't know what to call them other than that. Vespa style scooters.
What's a Vespa style scooter?
Well, the kind that you sit down on, as opposed to the kind that looks like a skateboard with a handle.
Oh, okay. Got it. So it's like a little motorcycle, a little motorbike kind of.
Little motorbike kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we've talked about this quite a lot on the show. The company Gogoro has a huge footprint in Taiwan, and Taiwan is the kind of world leader in these kind of electric scooters. And shout out to our friend Ian, who sent me this amazing YouTube video that really puts the whole thing into context, because a lot that I learned from this, I kind of knew already, but the video just does an amazing job of basically taking you there, because I've never been to Taiwan. James, have you been to Taiwan?
No, and it's not high on my. I haven't been to a lot of places, so it's not high on my list. I know a lot of people love Taiwan, though.
Yeah, no, lots of places in the world I haven't been to. So I thought this video was amazing on YouTube because it really kind of set the scene and really explained everything in a great way. So the channel is called Life Where I'm From. And the video is called How Taiwan Became the EV Scooter Capital of the World. So it's a great video. It's really well researched. He cites all kinds of sources for where he gets these numbers from. I just want to go through this to kind of explain, why this is such a big deal. And so Gogoro is this company in Taiwan that has battery swappable scooters, the Vespa style scooters. It's got 2 batteries in each one. They started in Taiwan because this is the world capital of these kinds of scooters. The density in these things is insane. There's 14 million scooters in Taiwan and only 24 million people. So, they're getting close to a scooter per person if this keeps up.
But the thing is, these things put a lot of pollution, don't they? A lot of VOCs, bad pollution, particulate matter, the actual pollution that you can see, as well as greenhouse gases.
Yeah, these are small 2-stroke engines, which we've talked a lot about on the show. We had a video on TikTok that kind of went viral around this sort of issue, is that these small 2-stroke engines, like in a lawnmower, just produce an insane amount of pollution, particularly the particulate kind. Because they're a small engine, I think they're not maybe that bad in terms of CO2, like greenhouse gases. But in terms of like the air that we breathe, like this is horrible. and the noise is horrible. And, so in the video, they've got amazing shots of these streets in Taiwan that are just wall-to-wall scooters, and the sound coming from them is horrendous because most of them are still gas.
Well, listen, though, I read a thing, and I don't know if I talked about it on the show, but the electrification of scooters, I think I tweeted this, is killing gasoline by like over 1 million barrels a day or something, more than anything else. This electrification of 2- and 3-wheelers already is having a bigger impact than electric cars.
Yeah, well, in Taiwan, there's 552,000 people using this Gogoro battery swap system. So 500,000 scooters. That's definitely displacing a lot of gas. They do have a decent subway system in Taiwan, but it doesn't go everywhere. And so this is kind of keeping people on scooters a lot. The other solution of all this, of course, would be to keep building up public transit. And they should probably do that because even if all these scooters are electric, it still would be awfully congested on these streets with, all of these scooters. But electric would be way better. So a few more things I learned from this video. The batteries are a kind of like an elongated cube shape. They're sort of square shaped, but they're long. You pull up to the charging station, you pull them out of your scooter. There's always 2 empty spaces in the charging station. And as soon as you put the battery in, it knows who you are because they've done this just like Tesla has. You have to register. They've got your information on file. They've got your payment on file. So as soon as you put your battery in the machine, it knows who you are. You put the other one in, and then 2 more pop out, and those are the ones that you put in your scooter. And the whole process takes about a minute, and there's nothing required of you. Like you don't have to put in a credit card. You don't have to punch in.
You set that up in advance, and yeah, that's brilliant.
It's that seamless thing that Tesla does that everybody else should work towards with electric cars. So it's not perfect. The batteries are quite heavy. Smaller people, elderly people would probably struggle. They're about 20 pounds each, these batteries. And you also wouldn't want to, almost nobody charges at home. It does happen. You can charge these things at home, but you wouldn't want to lug these batteries like you pull them out of your scooter, lug them into your house.
Right.
Because there's 2 of them and they're kind of heavy. So when they first started rolling these things out, a lot of people were scared of them because they were so quiet. Like obviously the noise of scooters is a problem, and that's, it's super annoying. But if you're driving one that's silent, then nobody knows you're there, and people were very worried they were just going to get mowed over by cars. Now that there's more of them, it's better. But, this is still only 4% of the scooters in Taiwan are electric. Even though Gogoro has been a huge success, the overall market penetration of the installed base is still only 4%.
So we've got a long way to go. There's a lot more gas to displace.
Yeah, and there's other brands. Like Gogoro is the only one that has this big battery swapping network, but there's other scooters that you can just buy and charge at home. There's other scooters that you can rent, like you can just have a rental plan, to rent scooters whenever you want. The government has put a lot of money in to subsidize these things, so they have needed some help to get going, but they're still kind of pricey. It sounds like it's still more expensive to have one of these Gogoro scooters than a gas scooter because the gasoline, they're fairly fuel efficient, so you don't spend a huge amount on gasoline. So it's still, they haven't won on price quite yet, but the younger sort of, more tech-savvy people are very much into these scooters. They are trying to expand to other markets. India is a good one, and it might work well in India, but the population is not as wealthy as the population in in Taiwan. So that could be a barrier in other countries. Taiwan works because it's got a super high density of scooters. Their population is fairly wealthy. So it may be a kind of a slower rollout of these things in other places.
But we covered this mega factory all run by and operated by women in India that is putting out like $1,000 scooters that are smart scooters. They, work with your phone, and they have a mobile service on them that runs around, and if you have any problems and things like that. So they are putting out, maybe that's why they're putting them out, is because, the swapping part is too expensive right now. We got a little bit of feedback from our AI stuff last week. We did some satire on AI, and lots of people really, really liked it. And it's not often that we get high praise for our show. People go out of the way. So, people had a good laugh from that, and including RM Nuth on Twitter, who said the AI interviews were amazing and it made my morning, with a smile afterwards. So
Nice to hear. Thank you.
I'm glad all of you enjoyed that. It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
China is considering compensating utilities for all the coal-fired power they've built. That's nice, including plants that are likely to sit idle as Beijing accelerates its transition to clean energy. The reimbursement could come in the form of capacity fees for power users, such as industrial and commercial users may have to pay extra to appease the coal, which was a stupid idea, and they should stop building them soon. The summer of 2023 was California's coolest in more than a decade. All the heat, Brian, went to Canada. Burnt up our country. The more moderate weather this year broke a streak of 3 straight scorching summers, each ranking among the state's 10 hottest ever recorded. There is a Japanese initiative known as Cool Biz, a glass half full description of what could just as easily be called hot office. I didn't know about this. Maybe you did. Starting on May 1st every year, workplaces set their thermostats to 28 degrees now. This is largely because of the Fukushima and the energy shortages from shutting down nuclear. They're setting their thermostats at 28 degrees, which is like 82 or something. Yeah, 82 Fahrenheit to save energy. And it's a humid city, Tokyo.
That is too hot.
So people take off their business suits and start wearing polo shirts and things.
Well, I mean, that does make sense. You know, wearing a 3-piece suit in the summertime has probably been a dumb idea for decades now. So, you know, that change is perhaps a good idea.
I'm against suits. I mean, they do thin me out, but I mean, it's kind of an archaic thing. Anyway, for the New York Times, a new model suggests that in 250 million years, all land will collide into a supercontinent that boosts warming and pushes mammals to extinction. So we're halfway into our run, Brian, halfway.
Yikes.
CAS Fast Fact Time. In 2014, there were 10 EVs for sale in China, 11 in the United States, and 21 in Europe.
This is different models.
This is different models of EVs for sale. And in 2023, the second quarter, it was like this. 222 in China. China was the leader. Not that far behind was Europe at 190 and 70 in the United States. So the domination of Europe has flipped to China, and the United States is still behind. But boy, in that amount of time, 9 years, we've come a long way. And of course, the rate of that change is accelerating. So 9 years from now, good luck.
Yeah, and I've certainly noticed that, like watching like the Fully Charged channel on YouTube. They always have way more different EVs to review. So I'm always jealous of Europe. We have probably the same kind of number here in Canada, maybe a little less than the United States. But, progress nonetheless.
We do need a variety of models to appease everybody of different tastes. Yeah. So in a recent National Renewable Energy Laboratory study, researchers found that technology innovations making their way into commercial markets today and in coming years could unlock 80% more economically viable wind energy capacity within the continental United States. They will do that by making them taller, Brian. The wind turbines onshore will be taller and take advantage of wind that, places where you say there's no wind power, there's no good wind potential now, well, they can put a taller turbine in there where the rotor is about as high as the Washington Monument, and which is quite high. I'm not crazy about that part, but I mean, it will work. What they're saying is there's lots of potential unlocked just by not having the right kind of turbine, because the turbines have advanced. So that's good news. Hyundai is doing what GM did with home charging. When purchasing or leasing select Hyundai EVs, customers will receive a complimentary ChargePoint Home Flex Level 2 charger. Now, with the Bolt, if I bought the EUV version, which is what I ordered, they would give me a free level 2 charger. But the person who bought my non-EUV, the regular Bolt, actually ordered one, so I got that with my car anyway. And then they pay you money. They pay for your home installation up to $1,500 in Canada. So with Hyundai's case, you can get $600 off installation costs. I think that's a good idea, Brian, because, level 2, especially anywhere that's not, California or Hawaii or the South, anywhere that gets cool, not cold, but cool, you like to have level 2 charging because you do it more often. And it just makes it a lot more convenient. And in winter, it makes it a no-brainer to have an EV because it just heats right from the grid.
Yeah, level 1 where we are will basically just keep your battery from draining further when it's cold out. It's not enough juice to actually charge it, but it'll stop it from dropping further.
Saturday evening, big batteries provided 5.2 gigawatts of instantaneous power to California's grid. That's the equivalent of 5 typical nuclear reactors. That's always me saying that, but this is the article saying that. The batteries were charged up on sunshine earlier that day. That's from Clean Technica. Brazil is to cut emissions by 53% by 2030.
Yeah, a more climate-friendly government in Brazil.
It's time for some nuclear news. 12 nuclear reactors operating in Japan after Takahama Unit 2 is restarted. So they're going from 11 to 12 now. They're bringing them back up in line after fixing them up with new safety designs.
So maybe they can, lower those thermostats in the summer pretty soon.
I would hope so. My goodness. I couldn't do that. A humid climate at that? No, James would die. I'm just not made for that. The number 2 Takahama reactor was in service in 1975. I was 9 years old and expecting an electric car any day, by the way. And the country's second oldest operating reactor and is again generating electricity after being offline since November 2011. They are slowly returning the reactors to service after the government called for new safety measures. Electrifying just 30% of all light and heavy-duty vehicles in the lower Great Lakes region could save more than 1,000 lives a year and more than $10 billion in healthcare costs per year. Sometimes governments don't care about lives, but they care about money.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
And of course, this is the most populous region in Canada and a pretty populous region in the States as well around those Great Lakes.
So Toyota has a new campaign out, recasting hybrids without charge ports as hybrid EVs. That makes me mad. Makes me very, very mad.
Make some EVs.
They're just trying to not do anything and pretend they're with the cool kids.
Yeah, there has been other stories about, there's always stories about Toyota planning electric vehicles, but it does start to feel like they're at least starting to do it. And
5 years ago, they said they would have solid-state batteries that'd be better than everyone else's, and they're still 5 years away. So thanks, Toyota. And finally this week from Electric, Michelle Lewis writes, the International Energy Agency's net zero roadmap sets out what would need to happen in the global energy sector in the years and decades ahead to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The IEA debuted the first roadmap May 2021, and this latest release updates the first roadmap to take into account everything that's happened in the last 2 years. The 2023 Net Zero Roadmap takes into account the post-pandemic economic rebound and the incredible growth in some clean energy technologies, but also increased investment in fossil fuels and stubbornly high emissions. In the 2021 roadmap, the IEA projected that technologies not yet on the market would deliver 50% of emissions reductions needed for net zero in 2050. The good news is that number of technologies not yet available has now fallen to 35%. It's fallen by 15% in the 2023 update in just 2 years, Brian. Mm-hmm. The technologies that have yet to come have gone down. So that's really good because we've got a long way to go to 2050 and we've already made that much progress. So that's good news. And IEA Executive Director Faith Burrell said, the good news is that we know now what we need to do and how to do it. Our 2023 net zero roadmap, based on the latest data analysis, shows us a path of how to get there.
That's great to hear. That's amazing. All right, well, that's it. Thanks for listening. That's our show for this week. If you would like to contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, and on social media, Clean Energy Pod.
And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel for special features and check out our Clean Energy Show t-shirts, the wonderful Clean Energy Show t-shirts and other goodies with our logo on it. And the link there is in your show notes. If you're new to the show, remember to subscribe to your podcast app to our show because that gets you new episodes delivered every week. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.